Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Diplomatic Enclave. I'm your host Omar Khalid Butt. In our show, we talk to ambassadors, we talk to representatives from different organizations. We talk about the collaboration that they are doing with Pakistan and the contribution towards and the cooperation between those countries and ours, as well as those organizations and ours. Today is no exception. We will be talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, what are they? To talk more about that, we are joined by the Resident Director of the United Nations, Mr. Neil Buhne. Thank you very much, Neil, to have joined us. And next to him is our representative from UNIDO, one of the agencies of the United Nations, Mr. Esam Alqararah. Thank you very much, Mr. Esam Alqararah, to have joined us as well.
Thank you very much.
All right, Neil, let's start with you. Let's start on a very informal note. You've been here in Pakistan not so long. In fact, a couple of months, if I'm not wrong?
Well, it depends how you count it. Now, I've actually been here nearly a year.
All right.
And I lived here from 1990 to 95, so I've actually been here 5 years if you put my two terms together.
So you already have an idea about how Pakistan functions in the 90s and now. Any change?
Well, there is a change in the sense that the country is much larger than it was. It was 120 million people then. Now it's nearly 200 million. You have so many more people living in cities. But you also have much more infrastructure. You have the roads, you can get around the country much more easily than you could before. But you know, some things are the same, and we're going to be talking about the development goals, and many of those, there's been progress on some, but on others the progress, I think, hasn't been as much as the governments would have liked.
Exactly. We were going to talk in detail about that, Esam. UNIDO is one of the organizations, key ones of the United Nations. Now, being a representative here for not so long as well, if I'm not mistaken, how have you found the progress as far as your goals are concerned?
In fact, I am approaching my third year here, and UNIDO has been here almost 45 years. And this year we are also
the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, celebrating our 50th anniversary. For me, Pakistan is a great country, and there is great potentials in regard to industry to be achieved.
All right, Neil, coming to you, let's take the issues one by one. First of all, sustainable development goals have been initiated between 2015 and 2030. It's called the 2030 program, if I'm not wrong. Now, before that, we had the Millennium Development Goals that were between the 1990, I think the year was 1990 and 2015. Around 8 goals were set for those timings for all the countries around the world. What has been the progress worldwide as far as the MDGs are concerned? Is the United Nations satisfied? And then we'll come to the region.
I think on the MDGs, the big progress was on poverty. If you look at the reductions that there were during those years from 2000 to 2015, it was tremendous. Similarly, there was a lot of progress on education. There was a lot of progress on health. There were reductions in maternal mortality. But the progress was unequal. You had some countries, for example, China, which made dramatic progress and was the main reason why poverty decreased so much. At the same time, you had other regions of the world, areas of South Asia, some areas of Africa where the progress was much, much less.
All right. And coming to the region, that is South Asia, and specifically to this region, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, how has the progress been as far as attainment of the MDGs is concerned?
Well, there's some areas where there was a fair amount of progress. I mean, in Pakistan, the goals with respect to water supply and sanitation were met. But if you looked at the goals of poverty, it was a bit of mixed bag. There definitely were reductions of poverty, but generally they weren't to the levels which the goals had set, which was, I think, a reduction by half.
All right.
But if you looked at access to education, again, there was significant improvement, but it wasn't as much as the goals
UNICEF took out a report not that long ago in which it illustrated what the developments had been made as far as the education and other things were concerned, and what were the lacunas that remained to be looked upon.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there was a review by the different UN agencies. UNICEF particularly focused on issues of education and issues of children's health. And those are issues, again, where there was progress, but it wasn't as fast as it should be. And I think that's recognized also in the Sustainable Development Goals, because key to that is that no one is left behind. That you might have progress, but if you still have a large section of the population which is lagging, that's wrong.
Exactly. Now, from the Millennium Development Goals that were 8 in number, you've got 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Why did you increase the number of goals? Was it to further specify what kind of goals you wanted, or was it to further diversify your goals?
Well, the Millennium Development Goals came out of something called the Millennium Declaration, which was signed in the millennium in 2000 by all the world leaders. And it had many elements to it, but it was almost too complicated, and it was decided that there was a need to focus particularly on certain things there was a strong consensus on. And those were the 8 Millennium Development Goals, which were essentially about social progress, ending poverty, environment, and partnerships. But I think it was increasingly recognized that that's not enough. If you're going to have the sort of progress that people deserve in the world, you have to have activities, goals that focus on people's needs. But you also have to grow the economy. You have to have goals that focus on prosperity.
True.
But you also need to have goals that deal with much more with the planet. I mean, there's much more awareness now in 2016 about the effects of climate change and how it's interrelated with life on seas, life on land. I think it also was recognized that peace is an important part of it, and good governance is. And that is a bit complicated. There's different views on it, but the fact is there was agreement on it to include it as one part of the goals. And then partnerships are needed. And I want to say that in putting these goals together, actually, Pakistan played a leading role.
It was it was the first country to have adhered to the Sustainable Development Goals, if I'm not
But even more than that, in the negotiations that took place in New York, the ambassador Malaya Lodi and her team played a crucial role, I think, in bridging some of the divides there were between different countries in the world. And as a result, you actually have a strong set of comprehensive goals. And I think the fact that Pakistan helped make them meant that it was the first country in the world whose parliament actually endorsed them.
All right. Esam, you've been here, as you said, the organization has been here 45 years. You're going to mark the 50 years this year of the friendship, of this collaboration between UNIDO and Pakistan. Coming to the Sustainable Development Goals, you're part of not one, but many other goals as well. The number SDG 9 is more particularly emphasized to your domain. And if I'm not wrong, the Vision 2025 that the government is also implementing has mentioned the SDG 9 more than 6 times in its report. How important is SDG 9 to UNIDO? And what are the other SDGs that you are also taking part in?
Yeah, SDG number 9 is the major SDG that fall in the domain of UNIDO, I would say. It talks about resilient infrastructure, inclusive and sustainable industry, as well as innovation, which all the 3 elements very important for Pakistan. I will talk later what UNIDO is doing in each of these elements.
All right.
Now, as you mentioned, UNIDO is also involved in other SDGs. I can say that we are involved almost in 9 SDGs, like the first one, which is poverty. All UN agencies have to work for alleviating poverty, as well as we are involved in gender mainstreaming, empowerment of gender. SDG number 6, which is the water. SDG number 7, which is renewable energy, we are very much involved in, and we have, fortunately, I would say, 3 running projects in Pakistan under this goal, and working for promoting the renewable energy in Pakistan. SDG number 8, which is economic growth, is very important for UNIDO as well.
It's very important for Pakistan as
In
well.
addition to SDG number 9, I would say SDG number 12 for consumption. SDG number 13, climate change, and SDG number 17 was partnership.
All right.
Because one of the uniqueness of the SDG is partners is very important to achieve it by 2030.
All right.
Now, I would like to add also, industry is very important for Pakistan. Up to 22% of the GDP is coming from industry. And as you mentioned, the 2025 vision focus on industry to promote and to increase the share of industry in the all over GDP of Pakistan.
And of course, the goal number 9, if I want to talk of it, is building resilient infrastructure, promote sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Now, these are three aspects
Yes.
of the SDG 9. How do you work in all these three aspects?
In fact, I will start with innovation. Pakistan is one of the countries, ranked one of the least countries that have policies promoting innovation.
All right.
So right now we are working closely with the Ministry of Industry as well as other counterparts to review the policies and see the gaps where the innovation policies have to be addressed, and then to work with the as mentioned, with the Ministry of Planning as well, in order to mainstream innovation and to accelerate it to be addressed in their policies and their programs and budget, as well as we're also very much involved in providing a capacity policy of support, such as, for example, we propose right now to initiate venture capital funding that can work with the innovators in order to commercialize their ideas. In addition to that, also we propose that the industries have their own call for awards for the innovators in order to solve specific problems facing the industries of Pakistan.
All right.
Investor Connect also, it could be a sustainable forum where we can bring the investors annually with the innovators and to seek how they can make matchmaking partnership. So these are one of the examples. This is one of that what can you do work with the government of Pakistan and the various institutions in regard to innovation. Yeah.
I think maybe one interesting thing is, although, as Esam said, if you look at the global indexes of innovation, Pakistan is not at the top, it's in the lower part. But when UNIDO was involved with a program to promote innovation amongst young entrepreneurs, people from Pakistan actually won the worldwide contest.
Exactly. We had two of those here
Yes.
in one of our shows previously. And I think it's very good. Innovation and entrepreneurship are kind of interlinked one with the other. And in Pakistan, you see a lot of these, of the youth involving themselves and trying to come up with new ideas, innovation.
Yeah.
as
Now,
you
just
call
to
that.
add to what Neil said, that Pakistan this year ranked #1 when it comes to applicants globally.
All right.
So there is a huge potential to promote innovation along the startups and the youth entrepreneurs, youth, academia, so that they apply. And if we look to the lesson learned and the achievement, there is a huge, wonderful achievement that have been done during the last 2 years. Yeah.
All right. Well, coming back to the Sustainable Development Goals, because you'll be at more generally, you could talk about these. How involved is the government of Pakistan in implementing these SDGs, and how much do you feel that the different ministries that you've been talking to achieve these SDGs have come forth with their own suggestions?
I think during this initial stage, first the design and the approval, Pakistan has been as far ahead as any country.
All right.
The Ministry of Planning has incorporated them, as Esam said, in its own plans. But I think right now you have at one level a big activity that the Ministry of Planning is doing together with P&D departments of different provinces to integrate the SDGs into planning mechanisms, to put in monitoring mechanisms. That sounds maybe a bit boring, monitoring mechanisms, but I think if you talk to Esam Alqararah, he'll say that in the past with the MDGs, the weakness was there was no monitoring, and as a result, when things went off the rails, they weren't able to get them back on the rails. And then for different SDGs, we've had specific consultations, both at the national level and at the provincial level, for about half of them at this point. And of course, this is early stages, but I think it's a good start. But the SDGs aren't about the goals. The SDGs are about giving incentives for those goals to be met.
Exactly.
And we're on the right path, but there's a long way to go.
And also, there's a little bit of change, Esam and Neil, this time, is that in 2020, if I'm not wrong, they're going to have a whole monitoring of these 5 years between 2016 and 2020 of all that has been done to achieve the SDGs. Now, does that put more pressure on you people?
Yeah, as you mentioned, one of the uniqueness of the SDG compared to the MDG, as you mentioned, that there is accountability and the data. There should be collection of transparent data. And by 2020, as the RC said, there would be an evaluation.
All right.
How much we are close to that. And yes, I think it's a challenge for all the stakeholders, the UN on one hand, and the national institutions the other. When it comes to SDG 9, I would say, in addition to what the Ministry of Planning is doing to mainstream the SDG in their plans, I can see that also. I am very pleased to see the Ministry of Industry is very much involved in mainstreaming SDG number 9 in their policies. In fact, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Secretary of Industry, who is doing a great job. This week, I think it's not me who should advertise, announce it. It should be the ministry. But just to for this discussion, they agreed that the government is going to launch the venture capital funding.
All right.
Yes, as a initiative toward, I would say, encouraging this funding system, which would be reflected positively on innovation. So as far as UNIDO is concerned, we are very much pleased so far to what has been done. It's okay, it's 6 months, but even within 6 months, we are very pleased that with the discussion and with the preparation that has been achieved so far.
All right, well, that's great. I think as far as positive developments occur, that will go only in the front, that will only go in the stride of not only our government, but also your organization. Now, Neil, Ban Ki-moon has said that sustainable development is the path to the future. He says that it offers a framework to generate economic growth, achieve social justice, exercise environmental stewardship, and strengthen governance. Now, coming to Pakistan, of course, Pakistan has taken the stride, the first country to have adopted it, also in the parliament. What about the other countries of the region?
Yeah, well, I think all the countries of South Asia have taken it quite seriously.
All right.
I worked in Sri Lanka before. I was the resident coordinator there. And there the MDGs were very much something that drove development, that despite the fact that there was a conflict going on, the government felt those goals were important to meet. And I think it even shaped a bit the post-conflict priorities in the country. And I think the other countries of the region put a high priority on it. But as I said, Pakistan was the first to actually adopt it. And the work that we have with the Planning Commission here is ahead of that in other countries in South Asia.
All right. Now, one of those SDGs is climate change. Climate change is also one aspect that is very important, not only for the United Nations, but for the world over, also for Pakistan. Now, we have the Paris Agreement as far as climate change is concerned. Now, how do you feel has this climate change issue been addressed globally and regionally, specifically to our region?
Yeah, well, I think there's been a lot of cynicism over the years about climate change, which I think has been partly justified, because essentially, like my home country, Canada, has produced much more than its share of greenhouse gases over the years, vis-a-vis a much larger and poorer country like Pakistan. But I think the pace of climate change has actually made these countries in the north, I guess, put up more of their share.
All right.
At the same time, you actually do have a genuine global agreement that came out of the COP21 in Paris. And all signs are that the next one, it's called Conference of Parties, which is a very technical name for essentially the climate change agreement. The next one that will be in Morocco is also expected to take it forward. The fact that you had the presidents of the United States and China just a few days ago in Beijing at the G20 signing a huge agreement on climate change, making their commitment to COP21. You wouldn't have imagined that, say, 10, 15 years ago, you'd get that consensus.
So the countries are getting more and more serious as far as this...
They aren't serious enough, but they're getting more serious.
What about the developing countries? Are they as implicated as the developed countries?
Well, the developing countries are very implicated in the sense that they're victims of climate change. When I worked in Geneva before, I did a lot of work with the Philippines, which is as vulnerable as any country because it's right on this sort of typhoon and cyclone belt. And they've decided that they have to play their part as well in reducing climate change. Pakistan is the same. It's almost as vulnerable as the Philippines to climate change. It's the country with the biggest gradient in the world, the biggest difference between the high point and the low point, from K2 right to the sea level, which means when the rainfall is messed up, it not only affects the mountains, but it affects the rest of the country too. And Pakistan has to do a lot to adapt to climate change. I think climate change adaptation is more important for Pakistan than perhaps climate change mitigation.
Yes. All right. Speaking of climate change mitigation, Esam, Ban Ki-moon also said that there is no plan B as far as climate change is concerned, because there is no planet B. So we have to be more serious about an issue such as the climate change. Now, you talked about innovation as part of your principles that guide UNIDO. What are the innovative techniques that could be used as far as climate change is concerned?
Yeah, I would like to highlight that, as Neil said, that Pakistan is one of the countries who are most vulnerable when it comes to climate change. You can talk about floods, you can talk about drought.
Earthquakes.
Earthquake is different. I mean, I'm talking about the climate change. Even 1 degree centigrade more than the average would affect harmfully.
But even disasters such as earthquakes do affect the climate indirectly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about what can we do now? For example, we are working with the Ministry of Climate Change in different areas under mitigation, such as trying to minimize the industrial pollution, which affect the quality of water and the rivers. That is also source for drinking water for many villages and 100 villages. We have been working in Kasur. We set up a treatment unit plan that was, I would say, 20 years ago.
All right.
And now we are setting up 2 other treatment units. When in Sialkot, we are working with the Chamber of Industry there and the Ministry of the Provincial Ministry of Environment, where they reallocate the tanneries of Sialkot to a different area, and now we are setting up treatment unit. One also we are going, a new project has been launched recently to work in Karachi as well. So this is one of the projects, I would say one type of that we are working with the climate change ministry in order to mitigate or to alleviate industrial pollution. Now, one very important area is renewable energy. And nowadays, we are, as I mentioned earlier, that we are running 3 projects in regarding the renewable energy and energy efficiency for industry as well. We just concluded a international conference on biomass. We introduced this project last year, and now the gasification technology for happily, I would say, I'm very pleased to say this, that it's already introduced in Pakistan, and many gasifiers are produced locally. Now, we also launched a new project on sustainable industry, sustainable energy for industry. We work on both renewable energy as well as energy efficiency. Now, innovation is also, as you mentioned, is a very important area where a lot of devices have been innovated that can reduce the consumption of energy, which once again will affect.
I think it's very important even for a country like Pakistan that as less energy as possible could be utilized, especially in the industrial sector, so that the energy could be distributed evenly.
In fact, the energy issue in Pakistan is very important, not only on climate change, on economic dimension as well. Unfortunately, everybody knows that many industries, textile industries, are relocating to neighboring countries because of the issue of energy. So solving this issue is very important for a country like Pakistan.
Even our government is very determined to end this issue by 2018. Our Premier has said it again and again that they are implementing many different projects slowly and steadily so that this situation gets terminated, ends by in the next 2 years to come.
Yes, but I think still there are huge potential to be for improving the. For example, renewable energy is an area that the government can create the conducive environment to. For example, solar
And in a country like Pakistan, it could be very well used, yes.
It's hardly you can see any solar panel on the roof of any house. So there is a potential to promote this domestic industry. It's not a sophisticated industry to be promoted.
All right. So you feel that with the cooperation of the provincial governments now after the 18th Amendment, the progress has been quite
I mean,
satisfactory.
we are, and also I'm pleased also to say that in cooperation with the climate change, and I would like also to take this opportunity to thank the ministry because they are running or managing the some global funds like GEF, the Global Environment Facility. So we are working closely with them together with UNDP and other UN agencies. In the pipeline, there are two projects. One in solar, where we are going to create energy for the public institution in Islamabad. Of course, we are not the first. There is another project that has been already launched in the Parliament, in the General Assembly.
Yes, but it was one of the first parliaments to go green.
Exactly. And now the idea is to go for most of the public institution to have their own energy created by, solar energy. The other one is on Hydel. Hydel, there is a new technology, I would say, that has been implemented in different countries, where with a small turbine, you can use the canal to generate energy off grid, mainly for the rural areas that are out of the grid. So for the household consumption, for the village consumption, there's a huge potential to, so it's good. I'm very pleased also to say that we are now working with the Ministry of Climate Change to launch this project very soon.
All right. Neil, United Nations has a mandate not only for climate change, for sustainable development, for humanitarian issues, for youth issues. So many different goals to achieve. How much importance, let me rephrase it, does the United Nations put to the implementation of these goals and these mandates?
Well, they're sort of fundamental to our existence. The United Nations is about bringing about positive change in the world. And to do that, you have to have a degree of commitment. Mandates, which all countries of the world have agreed on, have a lot more weight than something that's pulled out of air by one country or one organization. So if we have something like the Sustainable Development Goals, which everyone agrees on, it's something we need to push. And they are innovative. One of the issues with development, we all have ministries, we all have UN agencies that have their particular mandates.
True.
But as Esam was illustrating, things are very much linked. And for example, climate change in Pakistan. Well, because climate change is happening, that creates a special necessity for the type of innovative technologies that Esam was talking about. April 2015, Chitral was affected by very, very bad rains. I think it was even a bit later than that. It essentially was a monsoon rain coming in a bit early, and it never had come into Chitral Valley. It was too far north. The whole place was devastated by tremendous flooding. That also destroyed the Hydels that were in that area, that destroyed the infrastructure that was in the area. So it wasn't just climate change having an immediate flood. It was climate change actually affecting the ability of to generate energy in that area. It affected culture because, for example, the Kailash Valley, which is one of the world heritage areas or cultural areas of Pakistan, that was nearly destroyed as well. So there's a whole link amongst these things that I think hasn't been looked at in the past, and climate change actually ties to almost everything.
All right. And since, almost a year that you're here, you've visited different places, you've seen the development that has taken place and how the different United Nations agencies have been working, UNIDO also. You've been to the Kuram agency not that long ago. Now, when you visit these areas, what are the different areas that you find are need to be implemented first and foremost in collaboration with our government?
It depends very much on the situation. You referred to Kuram, which is a remarkably beautiful place, which I think very few people know how special Para Chinar is. And the architecture of the villages there is amazing. But that's an area that's been affected by conflict for very, very many years. So what's needed there fundamentally is peace, which is happening. But what's needed there is very basic assistance to help people get back on their feet, to rebuild infrastructure. And then all these other things come on later, but it's about very, very basic needs. I was in Sindh not so long ago. I went to a place called Sujalwal, which is near Tata, and sat along with my colleague from WFP in a village with about 50 women. And we talked about issues of stunting. Stunting is when people don't grow fast enough.
I went with the World Food Program some time back, and I also witnessed that.
That's right. So we have 42, 43% of the population of Pakistan is stunted. The interventions there are good education, supplemental feeding. Then you have urban issues. Similarly, if you go to Karachi, sometimes the drains burst, and you have no water, or you have sewage where you shouldn't have sewage, and that has a knock-on effect, on health. The interventions there are trying to get the infrastructure working better, trying to get the city government working better. So, I mean, it's not simple, and I think that's the virtue of the Sustainable Development Goals, that they actually make something complicated a little bit measurable, and try to get an international consensus about that. And complicated actions need to have specific targets, and that's what the Sustainable Development Goals are good.
Because you've been visiting these areas, and you can, being the resident coordinator, you can pinpoint areas and the sustainable goals that need to be implemented first and foremost, and then they can be kind of followed up by the others.
In fact, when it comes to areas, let's say, in regard to SDG 9, which talk about resilient infrastructure, now I would like to link it with CBAC.
All right.
And there are many industrial parks that either existing or to be planned, mainly in the KBK province. Now it's the time to qualify these zones and to do the proper I would say, industrial map, so that you know the energy need, I would say, the water, energy,
could be properly met with according to the zones that have been made.
Exactly, and to see how from the beginning to see to anticipate the pollution, how to alleviate it.
All right.
The treatment units needed, how every industry can, the output of this can be the input of the other, how to integrate them together, and how to qualify these industries to be on a global standards that they can attract investments.
All right.
So this is what is the SDG 9 is about. Yeah.
But you've been here almost 3 years, you said that in the beginning of our show. Now you've gone through that phase where the Millennium Development Goals were to be implemented, then we've gone to the SDGs phase now that has to be implemented in the next almost 15 years. You've visited Pakistan and the areas. When it comes to UNIDO and the goals that it has to achieve in different countries, including Pakistan, what are the goals that you feel are most imperative?
Nowadays. I mean, previously, as the RC said, the MDG were more focused on the social dimension. Economic dimension somehow was missing.
All right.
Even we were trying at that time to see, okay, we can fit under an MDG number 1 or MDG number 8.
But now there's the SDG 8 that is specific to economic growth.
Exactly, the SDGs are more comprehensive and more inclusive. Even all countries should be involved, because most of the poverty people are living in the middle income countries, not in the LDC. So all countries should be involved right now. Now, when it comes to Pakistan, I can see that SDG number 9 is very relevant to Pakistan.
All right.
Because in Pakistan, industry in Pakistan is not a new, from the establishment of the country, industry was playing a very important role in the economy.
All right.
So I would say SDG number 9 is an area that has a great potential.
And our government has recognized that potential, because we have time and again mentioned it in the Vision 2025 as well, as we said.
I would say it's not the government as well. I can also have to highlight the role of the private sector.
All right.
In Pakistan, there is a
public-private partnership.
Exactly. From the big, I would say that you have a vibrant private sector.
Yes, we do.
Especially in that triangle, and that's a triangle, Sialkot, Wazirabad, Gujarat. I mean, where do you find in the world that the private sector initiate a airport? Where is it?
Yes, true.
I've been there many times, and I found that I have been hearing that the people that are born as entrepreneurs.
All right.
So there is a huge potential for this country to grow exponentially, I would say.
All right. Neil and Esam, we're a bit short of time, but last few words, how do you see the collaboration between the United Nations and Pakistan as far as the implementation of SDGs is concerned?
Well, I think everything is more or less on track in the sense that you've got this commitment. And it's important that the commitment not just be at the federal government level, it has to be at the provincial government level. And as Esam was saying, the private sector and civil society as well. But I think there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, I found myself by accident in the same airport in Sialkot when I was diverted once. It was fantastic that that was made by the private sector. But you've got to deal with issues of inequality. You have to deal with issues of 24 million children being out of school. You have to deal with issues of hunger, and you have to deal with issues of how the cities are functioning. I could go down the list. SDGs provide an opportunity to make that push.
All right.
I am very pleased right now, so far, with the cooperation going on, particularly with the Ministry of Industry and Climate Change. However, as Neil said, the challenge how to translate to the provincial level.
All right.
And how to engage the private sector in this partnership.
All right. Well, we were in conversation with Esam Alqararah and Neil Buhne. Neil Buhne, of course, the resident coordinator of the United Nations in Pakistan, and Esam Alqararah, the coordinator for UNIDO, one of the sub-organizations of the United Nations working in Pakistan since the last 45 years. Now, a lot of things have been made. The Sustainable Development Goals that have been initiated that have to be implemented by 2030 are an important asset not only for the United Nations but also for Pakistan. A good start has been made by our country with the being the first country to have adopted this SDG. Let's see how this goes. A lot of lacunas need to be filled in, and inshallah, with the way things are going, we will be seeing a lot more progress in many different fields as per the SDGs are concerned. Omar Khalid Butt bids you farewell from this episode of Diplomatic Enclave. We'll be back inshallah next week with another program and different guests. Till then, stay tuned, take care of yourselves, and Allah Hafiz. And gentlemen, thank you so very much to have been here on the show.
Thank you very much.